sit back, relax, and get ready because this is Things Mom Never Said, Secrets to Aging Well. Welcome back to another episode of Things Mom Never Said, Secrets to Aging Well. I am April Rocky, and this is my mother.
I'm Sherry.
And today we are joined by a wonderful woman that I heard speak recently. And let me just introduce her. Enita Kushi has always dreamed to be a lawyer since she was 6 years old and help make other people's lives better. As a lawyer, Enita is honored to be able to help clients from all diverse backgrounds with different goals, needs, and expectations. Enita is passionate about her life's calling and getting to live her childhood dream every day. She loves being a lawyer and improving people's lives, giving them peace of mind by assisting and guiding her clients to making decisions that change their lives for the better. Enita focuses on helping clients who are looking to have freedom, choice to make their own decisions, and who want to protect themselves and their families by creating and implementing their estate plans. Enita is the owner of Kushi Law Firm, and that is an estate planning, trust administration, and probate firm based in Naples, Florida. Her practice is dedicated to helping women protect their well-being, preserve their assets, and thoughtfully plan their legacy. Welcome, Enita.
Thank you so much, April. Thank you, Ms. Sherry.
You're welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, we're so excited because we have been talking back and forth about planning and estate planning and what that looks like. And when I saw you speak, light bulbs kept going off and I was like, oh my gosh, do we have the right things in place? Do we have the right people? Because I learned some things during that were not as settling as I thought they would be. So there were a couple of things in there I thought, well, yeah, maybe we don't know everything we think we know. So I'm excited to have you on to talk about where we begin with estate planning as women so that we are protected and that we make it easier on ourselves if in the event our spouse should pass away or if we pass away, that we have our plan in place for everyone to execute on, that there's no question.
Yeah, and very importantly also is healthcare during our lifetime, as far as who and what our wishes are, which oftentimes people only focus on the passing part of it, not, well, what's going to happen while I'm alive. So that's also an important part that maybe we'll have time to touch on.
Very good. That's good.
Yeah, that's the one thing that shocked me is that as a wife, I did not understand that if my husband goes in the hospital, I have no say. I can't make just directives for him because I'm his wife, and I can't take care of things just because I'm his wife.
Healthcare Florida does allow you. However, if there is, when it comes to legal and financial, then yes. Unless there is a power of attorney in place, then you are correct. You would not be able to do things on behalf of your husband. But thankfully, Florida does have a statute that says if the person never designated a healthcare agent, there's a priority list, and the wife or husband, the spouse is at the top of the list, and then the children. And typically, not always, the doctors are not looking for the piece of paper, but sometimes they say, well, do you have authority? And that's more often when it comes to relatives or children, because as you can imagine, if you have 2 or 3 children, then they all have priority if there's not a surviving spouse. So thankfully, so far, my clients have never run into this issue, but I have had people say that when they have gone to the hospital for their mom or their father, that the either the doctor or the nurse has wanted to see if there's healthcare directives indicating who's in charge to make decisions. So it's sort of, it depends on who you're dealing with. And if they really want to follow the law, or they just need someone to help them make decisions for you while you're in the hospital, or the doctor's office for that matter.
Sounds like not all states do that, though.
That is correct. For example, Ohio, there is no statute. You have to have it in writing. Whereas Florida, thankfully, does have a statute that allows the list, the list of individuals that could and can make decisions for you. However, that doesn't mean that those people do want to make the decision, or that you would want them to make decisions, because there are children that don't know their parents' medical history. There are children that don't have contact with their parents. They may be in the hospital and the children don't know because they could be out of state, etc. So when there is no family or the connection are not as tight, designating the person is obviously very, very helpful so that in case of an emergency or while you're in the hospital, you're fine, but things don't go as well. There's someone that the doctors can consult with as far as what the wishes are of the patient. So very important. When we're younger, we don't really think about these things, but as we get older, they do become very important.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many legal statutes and things that we really, as just normal human beings without the superpower of being a lawyer, would never even know.
Well, believe it or not all lawyers know things that you and I could discuss today because the reality is that they're in their little niche and they may know, for example, corporate law and tax law, but if you talk to some lawyers, they themselves haven't done their planning because again, we're working, we have families, and we're not thinking, well, one day if I get sick, what would my wishes be, or who do I want in charge to help me? Who's the right person or people? So even though they have their license, that does not mean that they know the nuances, unless obviously you're in this area where you're dealing with this type of matters every single day, and then through your clients and their stories, you learn things as a lawyer as to, for example, what to do, what not to do, things to uh, start asking your clients to prepare them, because when I was in the early stages of doing the planning for clients, oftentimes, most of the clients tend to be older. But one of the issues was that I wasn't keenly aware that for families in Naples, especially because their families are not here, there were no emergency plans as far as what happens, and especially if people are living alone. So now I definitely encourage my clients to engage or have people that are on standby mode, that in case of an emergency, who is contacted. And or if they don't have anybody or don't want to burden, right, that's a big thing, people don't want to burden their friends and family, is to engage a company like a home care company that provides those services and can check in on you, because oftentimes you have people that are by themselves in our area. They live fine until there's a fall or some other medical emergency, and then no one knows that they are, in need of care. They can't even reach the phone. I had a client like that last year where she didn't have a cell phone, she didn't have any of those life alert, no smartwatch that could call 911. And thank God for her, she had a neighbor that was paying attention that the paper wasn't being picked up. Now imagine, she also gets the paper. How many people get the paper nowadays? Not a
Right.
lot of
True.
people. So that was her saving grace, the paper, and the neighbor cared enough and was paying attention to realize, I see the paper hasn't been picked up. Is she okay? And then found her on the floor, unfortunately. So she was very lucky, extremely lucky.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Well, and at that just sparked it, like, women live longer than men. So the chances of us being alone in moments like that are even higher, because we're living longer. And yeah, that's scary stuff.
Well, it's not scary. It's really just preparing, right? We are women tend to be younger than the gentlemen. Statistically, women live longer, um, and so depending also obviously on the generation, some of the ladies are used to their husband doing a lot of things for them and taking care of things, whether it's financial or around the house, etc., which is great. Obviously, that's a lovely husband to have that takes really good care of you as the wife. With that said, the, what's very important is to have the conversation, to have the knowledge that even though someone is in charge, in this case, let's say the husband, the wife also knows what's going to happen, who do I contact, etc., so that it's not always the one person taking care of everything. And then unfortunately, which we know it's going to happen, but we don't like it or want to think about it, is at one point, one spouse is going to be single. And then at that point, they're fully responsible for everything. And what I hear most often is that it's a huge burden. Not only are you grieving because you may have been married for 40, 50 years, now you've got to deal with all of the legal stuff, and that is not fun.
Yeah.
And most often, the spouse does not know what to do because the other spouse took care of everything. Most often, there are people who have their, as they say, ducks in a row. They know where things are. They have a good team around them, which is very important. But at times, what was it? Monday, I just had a phone call with a lady, and she said, "Well, my husband took care of everything. He knew numbers. He dealt with the lawyers, and now she's having to deal with it." And obviously, she's not enjoying it, and her husband died unexpectedly. So you add that to the layer, and it's now her full responsibility to deal with everything that she has to deal with as far as, let's say, taxes and properties they have, etc., etc. So having a joint conversation, a team effort of at least knowing, even though one person may be in charge, very, very important. Although not, it doesn't always happen. And what's also interesting that I've seen is I've had some couples where, again, typically it's the husband, he wants to share information with the wife, but she's like, "Oh, you got it, don't worry." And I encourage the wives very much. It's like, you have a wonderful husband. He wants to share information with you. Definitely listen, take notes, because if you ever need to get this information or you need help or you've got to, under an emergency basis, obtain information, you don't have to now figure it out or get stuck. You already know where to go, who to call, etc., and be and have the team, even though you may not personally be able to handle it. And then some, they just they don't want to hear it. They're like, "Oh,
Right.
he's fine."
Yeah.
So, Mom, when I want to get back to like what we do while we're alive, like what's important now. But when Dad passed away, did you feel like you had a handle on it, or did it become this big burden?
I felt like I had a handle on it because I think partly he had been ill. We knew that he wasn't going to live long. Um, and by a lot of time, I'm saying a couple of years, he had to have a heart transplant. And so we dealt with all of that. But along the way, it was very hard to even talk about death of your spouse. But along the way, it became easier because we had to. It was like, you've got to discuss these things. And um, so he had prepared me. I always had an interest in the books and um, his the bill paying and that sort of thing. He kept me aware of so many things there. But we communicated during that waiting period for him to and it gave him an opportunity to share different things with me.
Yeah, that's fortunate.
Hmm. It really, really was. And as a matter of fact, toward the end, he was not able to communicate. And I remember we were sitting on the sofa and he was trying to tell me something he wanted me to be sure to do. And I could not make it out. I could not understand what he was saying. And finally, I kind of helped break it down in words slowly. And he was telling me that there was ammunition in some of the guns, and he wanted me to be sure to take the ammunition out of the guns. And it was like, okay, I got you, I understand. And then I repeated it, and I said, okay. And then he's really settled down. But I thought, that is not something I feel comfortable doing. I'd probably shoot myself in the foot. But I had family and friends that helped with all that. That was great. But it's very important to have that communication, to know in
Yeah,
advance, especially.
yeah, that's really I mean, it's not fortunate, but at that, like being prepared,
Yes.
it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to be prepared in the right way. Do you feel like you had all of your legal stuff and financial like cinched up by the time that was all done?
Absolutely, because your father was that kind of person. I would go with him when we go to the financial planner and when we go to the doctor, and we were communicating our entire lives actually, and so we talked about those tough things like, we're going to have to go pick out the casket in advance, or you'd have to do that by yourself. And I remember that was kind of a funny story. He was very um, tight with the money and very purposeful when he spent it. And he had found the name of a company that actually makes wooden pine coffins.
Oh my God.
And he had clipped out a coupon from this company and said, he said, now this is where I want you to order the coffin from. And I said, oh, I think it was Ferdinand, Indiana. The monks were building them. I think is what it
Oh my
was.
gosh.
And so I said, okay, I'll remember that. But in my heart, it was like, I don't want to put him in some little pine box that's going to rot away in 2 years. So I went to
Oh
the
my gosh.
mortuary and took the tour and
Oh
took
my
that.
gosh. Oh,
But
well.
you've got to laugh at some of the things as you're going along also, because just the thought and the conversation about death, it's very hard to do with people that you love. And as you age and are thrown into the situation, you start talking, usually
Yeah.
gently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I think, you had the time to prepare, but most people don't have the time
Right.
to prepare and don't see it coming.
It's just,
So, Anita, like from your perspective, both healthcare and estate, what are the vital things that while we are lucid and early in the game, what do we need to have?
Well, I always like to start with the living part, right? Because the
Yeah.
dying part is not very fun to talk about. But some of the things we've already touched on, making sure that the right people that you want to make decisions for you for healthcare are designated. Obviously, talking to them about it so that they know, and maybe someone will decline and say that would be very difficult for me to make medical decisions for you. Some people already know that, for example, one of their children is the best person, they're a nurse, a doctor, or they're just strong dealing with these things. And then they know another child is going to be way too emotional and won't be making and can't make decisions. So, having healthcare designations, wishes for healthcare. How do you wish to be cared for? Now, this part is going to change. Our wishes when we're 40 are very different from when we're 60 and 75 and 85 because there are things that, of course, at 40 we would want to be provided to us, and at 75 or 85 we may not want to be having this medical care. So that part is going to change. So the person who's the agent to make medical decision and the person who's obviously creating the plan has to have an ongoing conversation because based on a diagnosis your wishes as far as care could very much change. So not only having the right people communicating your wishes as far as what they would be when it comes to medical care. Do you wish to stay at home, go into a facility? um, what does it look like when things that are important to you need to be conveyed because you obviously can't come up with every scenario to document.
Right.
um, Very very also important is when it comes to the legal and financial aspect. So, under law, under Florida law, no one can make legal and financial decisions for you unless there's a power of attorney in place, or if you don't have one and you lose capacity, then that gets turned into a guardianship. So now it's done by court order where someone is designated. So the power of attorney is very, very important. And most people don't know that the moment that you turn 18, you're now an independent person and your parents can't make decisions for you. So anyone over the age of 18 having that power of attorney in place is very important because as kids go away to college, their parents can no longer make decisions. Um, so it's a very crucial part because it removes the court intervention and the court oversight over decision making. And obviously, it takes more time to open court proceedings, the fees, etc. So this way, you've designated the people you want to make healthcare decisions for you, legal and financial decisions for you. And sometimes people are not clear, but When I mean legal and financial, is as simple as, for example, I had a friend whose daughter became incapacitated, unfortunately. The mother could not sell the car, the mother could not get out of a lease, etc. Because again, the child, she was 20 something,
Wow.
but now it's her child. So having those people designated are for the most basic things like, hey, I need to buy a car now because my daughter is disabled. I can get, let's say, a wheelchair in, or I need to file her taxes. Again, without the power of attorney, her mother could not do that. So unfortunately, she was forced into a guardianship. So the power of attorney, which is part of the plan, eliminates court proceedings. And as you may have heard me say, we obviously want to have more than one person as a backup in case the first person can't act. So that's also very important. So that you don't just have the spouse and that's it. Well, what happens if the spouse passes away? Now you've got no one in charge that could help you. Um, so those are crucial parts of planning while alive. Of course, there is things that we could get into as far as you've got to do tax planning depending on the estate, net worth. There could be obviously um, businesses that would require more in-depth and making sure corporate documents are in place. A lot of people have created businesses. There's no corporate documents that says how does this business get transferred to my heirs? What happens if I become incapacitated? What happens if I pass away? How does it get transferred? Usually people don't have those documents. So because it's so easy to create a corporation in Florida, you just go on Sunbiz and just register and that's it. Whereas when something does happen, a divorce, a bankruptcy, who actually owns this business? There is no actual documentation to indicate that. So while we're alive, obviously, when it comes to when someone is passing away, um, crucial to have a will. So you've designated who's in charge. If there is no trust planning, they will designate who is going to be beneficiaries. You also have included in there what they're going to inherit so that you try your best to minimize conflict for your family after your passing. Not that you can fully eliminate it because sometimes people raise issues just because they can, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, but the will is important. It also um, gives guidance to the court. For example, if the first person can't act, well, who do we have as a backup? Sometimes people are elderly, sometimes they're in a different state and say, I can't do this. I'm in Michigan and the estate is in Florida. So otherwise, then again, there would be now the court has to figure out who do we nominate as the agent to handle the estate. Um,
So what I'm hearing you say, Anita, is that you don't want the court to have to designate anything, create guardianship, because then none of your wishes are taken care of, or maybe your best interests aren't even at heart there.
Well, normally you do want to avoid court interference, but sometimes court interference is mandatory. So, um, if you've designated a healthcare agent and your power of attorney, those people would make medical, legal, and financial decisions for you. So you don't have the court then having to either find someone or family members fighting as to who's going to be in charge. Um, and why deal with the court system? You're adding to time and fees, etc. So normally you don't want that. Where court intervention then can be helpful and it becomes mandatory is, for example, if your agent, which would be the power of attorney, is breaching their duty. For example, they're misappropriating funds, they're not taking care of you. So then someone steps in and says, hey, court, this person is the agent, but they're not doing their job, or they've taken so much from the bank account, there's no money to pay the mortgage or the HOA, etc. So in those instances, even though someone has prepared and has a power of attorney in place and a healthcare agent, someone may challenge that because of what they're doing or not doing. And so usually this happens usually with step children, step parents, where they may challenge what that person is doing. Um, and go to court and say to the court that, yes, my husband does have his son as a power of attorney, as an example, but he's not doing his duties. And though, even though I'm the wife, legally, I have no rights because the power of attorney is in place. So at that point, I would have to go to court and try to remove the stepson as an example so that either another person is steps in, or I'm allowed to be the one that makes decisions. But yes, normally you want to avoid the court system unless you like to pay attorneys. Then by all means, like me, that was just kind of work. But it's true. It's you do your
Right.
planning um, with the intention of obviously taking care of yourself, but also avoiding having yourself or your family having to go to court and have to get wait for court approvals and um,
Right.
um, sometimes on not sometimes in guardianship they have to assess whether you have capacity or not. So again, these are all fees that are not necessary unless there's some type of conflict where it makes sense, and then for it to go through the court proceeding.
Okay.
Hmm.
Wow. Whew. Okay. And that's where my mind got blown the last time.
Maybe
um,
it's something we don't deal with every day, because how many people do you know that became incapacitated all of a sudden, right? Where now it's like an emergency basis. It may happen, but it doesn't normally happen to us, right? So it's like
right.
everything's good, and I've done my planning, so I'm all good. But it does happen where people do become incapacitated, have a stroke, car accident, so they may be disabled for a while. So it happens.
Yeah, it does. It does. More than we think and more than we want. Ugh. So after you spoke at the event that I was at, I rushed home and I called my mom and I was like, "Do you have these things?"
She did.
When was it, Mom, that you decided to get all of those things together? And was there a reason why it all happened?
um, yeah, I think when we first found out that your father um, didn't have very long to live, and your mind kind of goes into action, and we're surrounded with many friends and um, groups, and as you get together with a group of women and they're talking, and it goes here and there, and and you may land on that whole topic, and so it was like, all right, we know this has to be done, it has to be done now, and it seemed to me the logical very first thing you need to do is have that power of attorney designated, and begin to begin to put it in order with a reputable, honest attorney, hopefully someone that you have a relationship with, that you trust, that you know. And we've had a family friend at our church that we used to go to for other services or direction, I guess. So I made an appointment with him and we began the process. Um, my question that I would have for you, Anita, is my attorney is now on the edge of retiring,
Mhm.
and wonderful person. Have had a. I feel like I've kind of done life with him because there have been so many things that we've spent time on, and so I know that's going to come to an end. And I'm not sure who designates um, those people that will kind of take my case, or if it's something I need to approach and say, maybe now I need to find an attorney that's younger. Um, I don't know how that's really handled, and that's something I would like to know.
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. When attorneys retire, then the client, so you would have the option, like you said, of finding another attorney to create a relationship so that your family knows what the plan looks like, who they go to, if they have any questions, if the attorney holds a document, your family knows where the documents are, the plan. Um, Other times, what I've seen is because there is usually once the plan is done, more often than not, there's not a lot of contact between the estate planning attorney and the
Right,
client.
right.
So what happens is when the client either becomes ill or has passed away, then it's the family who picks the attorney to help them.
Okay.
Is the attorney still in practice? Sometimes. They'll go back to that attorney and say, you created my mom's plan. We need help with the trust administration, or we have this issue. Can you help us? Sometimes they have their own, let's say, friends or colleagues. So they'll go to them for help and say, this is what happened. Yes, my mom had this attorney, but he's retired. Or, believe it or not, the call on Monday was, we have an attorney, but we can't get a hold of him. So I
Oh my
need
gosh.
someone new. So then the family then would pick someone new to handle it. So it really does depend. I've seen both where they'll go back to the original attorney, they're still in practice. And if the one that you had has retired, either you've created a new relationship, and if you haven't, let's say it would be April or someone else in your family, then goes to a different attorney to get assistance with what has to be handled for either the probate, trust administration, or maybe nothing. Everything is done in such a way where there is very little or almost nothing to do. And sometimes that does happen.
If when this time comes and I say to myself, I think I need to change it. I think I need to find an attorney. Does it make it very difficult on that new attorney if they don't live in the same state as I do? Is it really tough, or is it a matter of, the law is the law, and that attorney just follows along and probably has to make some changes? But how difficult is that?
To make changes to the plan, you mean, or to assist you with, or your family?
To assist me or my family. Um, let's say I contact you and say, I really like you. I trust you. Can I switch everything and you become my attorney? Um, is that doable, or is it not wise because it's another state?
If it's another state, what's really highly recommended is that the attorney be licensed in Florida. And the reason for that is because if someone is licensed in Ohio, they don't know Florida law. They'll know general, obviously, what does this do? They
Yes.
can read it, they can interpret, they can say, oh, by the way, Miss Sherry, you have left out this piece of the planning, so you should implement it.
Hmm.
However, because every state is different,
Hmm.
you would probably be causing more harm by hiring an attorney outside of Florida
Okay.
versus
Oh.
someone in Florida. Obviously, you have to be a Florida resident. I'm a Florida attorney. Uh, so that is, I'm basing it on that.
Hmm.
As an example, what often happens because of how Florida law is when it comes to, let's say, the primary home, it's very, very unique. I won't go into details, it's not necessary. If you're outside of Florida and are an attorney licensed in another state, you don't know this particular law. So, what happens is the attorney up north changes the plan, not realizing that under Florida law, that's actually an invalid move. So, even though you say, I'm doing X in your will or in your trust, and under that state's law would be okay. But the fact that you're, let's say, a Florida resident, me, a Florida resident, it would be in violation of our law. So I was actually just having this conversation with my husband the other day because he's also an attorney. And the attorney had done a plan for a Florida resident. And now, even though the plan is in place, part of it is invalid. So highly recommend that an out-of-state attorney who's not licensed in Florida not update the plan.
Okay.
They can advise in general, but just like I would not go to and advise a client that lives in Ohio, for example, say, look, I could cause you more harm than good. It's best you hire an attorney there. Or what happens in that instance, there would be a co-counsel. There are some clients that say, no, 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 I really want you to be involved. You know my story, you know my family. I've now moved to Ohio, for example. Then we could co-counsel with an attorney in Ohio to do the planning. But I always decline to do a plan for someone who's not a Florida resident because of what I don't know about their state law. And to me, it's not worth it to have a client, right? That's wonderful. But if I'm going to do damage because I didn't know something about their state law, it's not worth it to me. And so it's best that the attorney be licensed in the state where you actually have your primary home and residence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not a big burden. So if someone comes in with a plan from another attorney, obviously, if you're in this practice area, you know what to look for, um, unless it's a very, very convoluted plan with businesses and trusts, etc., that's going to take some time to navigate. It normally is not, a big project to review and then say, okay, this is where you are. Um, have you reviewed the plan lately? Do you have any changes that you would like to make? For example, you don't want to have this nephew anymore, etc. So it's really not a huge issue when it comes to the new attorney taking over to be able to review the plan.
Okay. Very good.
I hope that
Yeah.
answers your question.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good because she's currently primary resident in Indiana.
Mhm.
So definitely then if your attorney's retiring and you want to find someone who's younger, you should stick with Indiana or someone who's licensed in Indiana, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And also that focuses on estate planning, right? You would want to do that because if they do litigation, again, they don't know the nuances of the law that goes into estate planning because that's not their practice area.
Right. Right.
It's like I said, there's plenty of attorneys that, they're great at what they do but they haven't done their own plan because they don't know what they don't know. And there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. They're people just like us,
Uh-huh.
They mean well,
Sure.
but they haven't done their planning.
Sure.
But you would
Yeah,
stick
so
with someone in your state for sure.
yeah, so we need a lawyer who is an estate planner and who understands estate plan law to make sure that you have everything you need. And then when you switch it over, then they'll just review the plan, make sure you don't have any changes, make sure they understand it, and then that's it, right?
Mhm.
That's right. And then you've
Okay.
created a relationship with that new attorney since the one you have is retiring. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
that
good.
sounds good.
Hmm.
So if when you do your plan, when you get all these things in place, I thought, and this is me watching too many movies and TV, but I thought then the lawyer had all the paperwork and they had the will, they had the stuff, they had the power of attorney, all of it. But we actually need to keep a copy of it, right? Like we should have somewhere in our person, in a lockbox, in a bank box, wherever, we should have a copy of all of the directives, correct?
Yes. So there are attorneys that keep the originals. They have usually vaults that they keep them, and it's essentially a way to basically have the client come back. So it generates more work. Honestly, that's what it does. But there are attorneys who do not keep the originals. They tender them to the client. Um, Nowadays, most attorneys will keep scanned copies. So at least if you were to lose it, the attorney has a copy. But with time, as mom said already, what happens when the attorney retires? What
Right.
happens to all those files that are scanned? So you having copies is very important. And I would highly recommend that things like the healthcare agent and the advance directive, the person who's nominated to make those decisions, have them accessible and easily accessible. As we know, what does that mean? On our phone. That would be the best way. So if you were mom's healthcare agent and she had a medical emergency and they said, well, who are you? We can't talk to you. We don't have you on our file. You can say, oh, yeah, I have the healthcare directive. How do I email it? How can I fax it to you if they won't, let's say, accept it by email, etc. You can immediately get it to them. So you make it easy on yourself so it's not on some hard drive at home and you have to get there. So those particular documents for the agents need to be easily accessible so that if they need to provide it, they can quickly. Um,
That makes total sense too, because in the moment,
Absolutely.
everything's going crazy. And if you just have it right there with you, then it's, like you said, you can like send it to whoever needs it so that you can make decisions as you need to and as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
yeah,
That
and
is sweet.
what's really nice to do is to have like a few pages where you have all information. For example, you have mom's social security, date of birth, Medicare number, what her insurance is, her car insurance, things that if you had to get them, you would have to start looking all over her house, for example,
Hmm.
versus where it has all the information, who her agents are, what their contact information is, etc., CPA account, things that you just naturally need if mom is not able to help you for, let's say the taxes, but they have to be filed. Now you've got to say, oh my gosh, who's her CPA? How do I find him or
Right.
her? So having it in one place, it's super helpful.
Mhm.
It's just a little bit of work, but it makes life so much easier. And it's actually a beautiful way to say, like, here's a gift. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to be stressed. And it's not, legal planning, but you're making it easier for your loved ones, whether it's family or a friend that's your agent, to be able to assist if the time comes. Because some people will never need assistance. They can do everything that needs to be done, and some people need more help than others.
Mhm.
Based on medical conditions or what happens to them.
Mhm.
That's so smart because I would have never thought about like all of a sudden I was like, I don't even know who her attorney is. So like all of that is coming. I'm like, that's right. Like, where is all that? Like, I
Right,
wouldn't
right,
know.
right. Yeah.
Well,
That's
aren't
right.
you glad we're having this conversation?
Yes, I'm sure she is.
So
Yeah.
glad because yeah, and let me just say this: there's nothing worse than seeing a dead friend's Facebook page pop up when someone could have gone and closed that account out. Like it's just really that's the worst. So yeah, if you have all of your passwords, all of your people, your CPAs, your house cleaner, your mortgage rep, whoever, like all of your people down, all of your passwords down, all of your stuff, for whoever is that one person, to know where it is, easily accessible. That's gonna change the whole game. That like takes all the stress out of it because you're like, I got it all right here.
Mhm.
Yes, and one that's very, very important that people here, especially in our area, don't think about is if their parent is in our area by themselves, they can't reach them. They don't have another phone number of a best friend, of a neighbor, to be able to say, hey, I've been calling my mom and she's not responding. Because again, all
Right.
things of an emergency. So saying, hey, mom, you're in this community in Naples. Who do I contact there in case I can't reach you? Uh,
Mhm.
because we think we can always contact our parents, right? We dial a
Right.
number, but what if they don't answer?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you decided, mom, to move somewhere where you didn't have one of us available, then that would be the deal, right? We'd have to like,
Mhm.
who's your neighbor, or who's your, pastor, or who's someone that we could call to check in.
Right, right. Um, my father had remarried, and they lived in Southern California, and I made trips out every year, maybe a couple. And at one point, he asked me if I would be in charge and actually take on that POA. And I told him I would, but I was also aware of the distance and all that. But my father became ill and passed away. But he had asked me, and they were always talking to me about different things they wanted. And my little stepmother Dottie, I love her. She was very smart in what she did. She got a booklet together and began to put all those important things in order in a book for me. And then when I'd go out, she'd say, "Now, honey, you know where the book is at. Do you want to take a look at it? Do you have any questions?" And I would say, "That'd be fine, Dottie." And then she gave me the original copy for her will. I had a copy of the old one, and she'd had it revised. And even sitting and reading through that will, even though I don't have that the mind of an attorney or the information or knowledge, it was still helpful because I could understand partially anyway what her desires were. Plus, she talked about it, and I asked questions, and I think we were so close that after Daddy passed, we just became like this. And I remember her asking me if I'd call her mother. And it was very hard because my mother was still living, and yet I loved Dottie like a mother. And I said, "Yes, I can call you mother. I can have two mothers." And but she was precious and made everything as easy as she could. So that helped me greatly, and I learned from that. So I have copies and lists, and I actually received a book where you can put different papers in and ask the questions, who's your CPA and all this. So
That's
I've
good.
been, yeah, it is wonderful. So it'll be helpful, I'm sure,
Yeah.
to you.
And you're
Well,
very
as long as Julie knows where it is.
Well, that's true. But as I finish that up, um, I think probably would be good for you all to have copies of some of the stuff. So it'll come.
Yeah.
But it does take, it takes you, first of all, you need to tell yourself, hey, it is going to happen. It'll probably happen sooner than later. So sit down and
So not.
write it out. Get it done. So that's a process, and it isn't difficult. It's just doing it.
Right? We need to get Anita the title of that little book so she can hand it out to everybody who comes in her door.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Truly, that would it's helpful. You probably have
Yeah.
something you go by.
Yeah. So, Anita, Travis and I are going to start working with you hopefully this fall. We are going to review all of our financial stuff again with our financial planner. And then our goal is to have all of these things written out with you in the fall. So, are there things before you go into a lawyer to do all of this? Are there things that you can do as an individual to prep and be prepared to go in and make it really easy?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, like mom already said, communication, if it's a couple, what their wishes are, individual and joint, because even though you are a couple, you have different wishes than your spouse, right? That's very common. So
Yeah.
definitely communication, which I love what mom keeps saying that and how she was so fortunate that Dottie, acted the way that she did because that's not always our experience and it makes it very
Right.
difficult for the stepchildren, even though she decided to call her mom. um, Having the conversation as to what does it look like if we need care, who would be the best person, do we have family in the area that we want to include or not include. um, if the individual does not have family, doesn't want family involved for one reason or another, it's helpful. And not before the meeting necessarily, but some people already have prep, which is they know who are they going to name, which would be a professional, right? Just like you have CPAs and architects and attorneys, there are people that are fiduciaries that do this as a living for as a profession for people that want a professional to help them, so that it could be their power of attorney, their healthcare, etc. But sometimes when people come in and they're like, I don't have a lot of family, or I only have, let's say, a disabled sister, and she's not, the appropriate person. Can you help me find someone? And so thankfully, we have people in our area that do this. But
That's good.
thinking through as far as, do we want to benefit any charities? Do we have any wishes for specific wishes for our children, etc.? And then also thinking, how do we pass on value that we're just not passing assets to our beneficiaries. That is helpful so that you're not, when the time comes, you say, okay, well, we're ready to now start preparing the plan. You're not essentially starting from scratch because you've given these things some thought beforehand as far as who do you trust, who would be the right person, who would be the right backup to the right person, and then a backup to that. Because we're not changing the plan every 3 months or every 6 months unless there's
Right.
some major life event where there is a falling out, or God forbid all of your agents were to
Yeah.
pass away, which we've never had happen, thank God. But aside from that, that plan is going to live and be in existence for a long time. It should be reviewed for sure because things can change and you change your mind and your wishes, etc. But once you create it, it's not going to change often. So having those conversations is helpful with, so that when you go in, you know what your individual wishes are, what your husband's individual wishes are, and then what you want to do as a couple for your family or, other individuals. Because people love to help and pass their, you know, wealth and life savings to other people than just their family, through friends, charities. Everybody's got different wishes, obviously.
Yeah. And I like how you said that if someone doesn't have any family, that, you can always help. There are agents that will help do those things. Because like in my case, I don't have children. I have a stepson, but will he take care of me? I don't know. So, it's good to kind of think that out. And, if you get to a place where you don't have any existing family, then yeah, it's good to see that there's a safeguard there. Or, I would probably write as much directive as I can down, so that I know that how I want it is being executed. But yeah, in the case that there's something that comes up that I didn't even think about, there would be a person.
Yeah, and sometimes attorneys will act in those capacities, especially like power of attorney, trustee, or executor. Most often, they do not act as healthcare because, as you can imagine, that can become a full-time job. So that's where the professional comes in. So yeah, it's actually becoming more and more common, believe it or not, especially in our area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do live in the area of, the aged population, I will say. Oh, well, that's cool. Well, there's so many other things that we could talk about with you, Enita, and we'll probably have you back on because I do want to get into a place where we're talking about wills and trusts and what that looks like and how we set that up correctly. Because, I know that there's a way to do like several layers of things so that, if you're in a place where you have a lot of financial abundance, that you can create safeguards so that your money is going exactly where you want it to go, how you want it to go. But we are running out of time on this one. So
It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to the basics though, because this, like getting these 3 things done, that's a big start. And then onto the will, right? So, so yeah, I think there's a lot of information here that I don't know that everybody knew or would know. And I think it's going to be really helpful because this is our year of helping women transform and getting in a better place in their life. And this will definitely help that from a safety standpoint and feeling secure. And yeah, I thank you so much. It was so valuable.
It has
Thank
been
you so
wonderful.
much. It's been great. And Mom had a lot of good points. So hopefully that will help some women and other people that listen to this wonderful podcast.
Very
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Mom,
Thank
did you
so
have any
much.
other questions before we sign off?
No, not at this point, but I agree. We need to have you come back so we can share more and learn more.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Anita.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so good. All right. Well, on our podcast, we always sign off with a big ciao, baby.
Ciao, baby.
Ciao, baby.
Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again next time for Things Mom Never Said, Secrets to Aging Well. We'll be back, so set your calendars, set your alarms, get ready, get set, follow, subscribe, and don't miss a beat.